always ask me where the ideas come from. They think it's a gift, this ability to conjure nightmares. They're wrong. The truth is, you don't find the real horrors. They find you. They hunt you down in the most beautiful places, and they hollow you out, leaving nothing behind but the echo of a scream and a memory you can never scrub clean. My worst story? It's not a story at all. It's a confession. It found me, and the woman I love, in the ancient, brooding heart of the Harz Mountains in Germany. Her name is Clara. Just saying it, it still sends a cold wire of fear straight through my heart. Clara was light. She was an architect, a builder. She believed the world was made of concrete things, of plans and measurements and logic. She was my anchor in a world of vague fictional terrors. And I dragged her into a real one. This trip was my idea, a 4-day hike through the Harz National Park. I was battling a mean case of writer's block, and she was drowning in the stress of a big city project. We were a perfect, broken pair, looking for peace in the storybook forests of Central Europe. The first day was idyllic, the kind of perfect you see in travel brochures. Sunlight streamed through a canopy of endless towering pines, painting the path in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. The air was so clean it hurt, smelling of damp earth and pine resin. Our backpacks were heavy, meticulously packed with enough supplies for our journey. We talked, we laughed, we walked for hours in that easy, comfortable silence that only comes when you're truly with someone. That comfort, it was a lie, a fragile illusion the old woods were just waiting to shatter. We made our first camp in a place the map called Hexenruhe, the witch's repose. The name alone should have sent us running. The clearing was a perfect soft circle of grass, but at its edge stood a ring of stones. They weren't natural. They were placed, old and gnarled, half swallowed by the moss and the forest floor. They felt watchful. Clara, with her brilliant, curious mind, was drawn to them immediately. "Don't, Clara. It gives me a bad feeling," I said. My voice was low, a whisper that the forest seemed to absorb. "It's geology. It's just rocks." She gave me that smile, the one that could dismiss all my dark fancies, and reached out. Her fingers, so sure and steady, traced a deep, unnatural groove in the largest stone. It wasn't a crack from weather. It was a rune carved by a hand long turned to dust. The moment her skin touched the stone, the world changed. A cloud passed over the sun, not slowly, but like a shutter slamming shut. The cheerful chorus of birdsong, it didn't fade, it was severed. The silence that fell was immediate and thick and heavy. It was the silence of a held breath. Clara snatched her hand back, shaking it. "Static shock," she mumbled, but her eyes were wide. She was rubbing her fingertips like they were burned. That night, the cold came. It was a damp, clinging cold that our fire fought valiantly against but couldn't conquer. Clara grew quiet, then distant. Then the shivering started. It wasn't a chill. It was a violent, bone-deep rattling, as if something inside her was trying to shake its way out. "I'm just cold," she stammered, but her voice, it was thinner, stretched. There was a gravelly undertone, a vibration that wasn't human. I wrapped her in every layer we had, holding her tight against me, my own body trembling with a fear I couldn't name. Her skin was icy. Then the words started. They weren't whispers. They were guttural, choking sounds, a language of broken glass and hatred. It clawed at the air between us. I tried to soothe her, to call her back. "Clara, baby, look at me. It's Elias. Fight it." Her eyes snapped open, and I knew. I knew with a certainty that froze the blood in my veins that the woman I loved was gone. Her eyes were vacant, black pools. The warm, intelligent light that was Clara was snuffed out. Something ancient and predatory looked out from behind her face. It saw me, and it hated me. When I tried to hold her tighter, she moved with a speed and strength that was impossible. Her arm lashed out, throwing me backward into the dirt with a force that knocked the wind from my lungs. She didn't get up. She just lay back down, the shivering ceasing abruptly, her face going slack. The silence returned, deeper and more terrifying than before. I don't know how long I sat there watching her, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Exhaustion, eventually, is a tyrant. It pulled me down into a black, dreamless sleep. I woke at dawn, stiff and colder than I'd ever been. The fire was dead ash, and Clara's sleeping bag was empty. My breath hitched. Clara? Nothing. Clara! The forest absorbed my scream, giving back nothing. No rustle, no call. I scrambled up, my eyes scanning the ground. There were no footprints, no sign of a struggle. It was as if the earth had simply opened up and swallowed her whole. Panic is a chemical fire. It burned through me, fueling a frantic, unuseful energy. I packed our camp with shaking, clumsy hands. My mind was a screaming static. The rules of the modern world. Phones, police, search parties. They meant nothing here. I was alone. My only allies were the contents of our backpacks. We had food for 4 days. I had mine, and I had hers. It was a grim, horrifying equation, but it meant I could search for 5, maybe 6 days if I was ruthless. It was a thin, frayed thread of hope, but I clung to it. The first day of the search was a blur of desperate, raw-throated shouting and mindless crashing through ferns and over long logs. I was just a man looking for his girlfriend. By the second day, the pure panic began to curdle into a slow, dripping dread. A certainty settled in my gut, cold and heavy as a stone. I was not the hunter here. I started finding things, or they were left for me. A strip of fabric from Clara's red flannel shirt, the one she'd worn the day before, was snagged on a thorny branch. A branch that was at least 8 feet off the ground. Then, a little further on, a dead fox. Its neck was twisted at an impossible angle, and it was placed neatly, almost ceremonially, in the center of the deer path I was following. And the sounds. God, the sounds. I'd hear her voice, a faint, heartbreaking sob, "Elias, help me!" It would come from my left. I'd spin around, crashing toward it, only for the voice then to come from behind me, now a low, wet chuckle. Liar! The forest itself was a taunting, malevolent entity, and it was playing with me. On the third day, I stumbled out of the tree line and onto a gravel forestry road. I almost wept with relief at the sight of something man-made. That's when I saw him. An old man, grizzled and stooped, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent a lifetime with these trees. He was inspecting a stack of cut timber. "Hello, hello, please!" I yelled, running toward him, my voice cracking. He turned, and his eyes, pale and wary, widened as he took in my disheveled, wild-eyed state. I fumbled for my phone, pulling up a picture of Clara, her face bright and smiling against a blue sky. "My girlfriend, she's missing. Have you seen her, Clara?" He looked at the photo and his face went ashen. He made a quick, sharp sign with his fingers, Not quite across, something older. Die Waldbraut, he whispered. The words like a curse. The Woods Bride. She takes the bright ones, the happy ones. He looked from the photo to my face, his eyes filled not with pity, but with a deep primal fear. You must leave this place. You cannot fight her. She is older than the stones. And with that, he turned his back on me, hurrying down the road without a second glance. His terror was a more potent poison than any I had felt yet. I was in a game against a force I couldn't comprehend, and the rules were written in blood and old, forgotten myths. The fourth day was the worst. The hope was gone, replaced by a grinding, soul-deep exhaustion. I was living on handfuls of trail mix and sips of water. Every shadow was a threat, every snap of a twig a promise of an attack. That night, huddled in a hollow between two roots, I heard her. Not a whisper, not a taunt, her real voice, clear and terrified, cutting through the dark. Elias, the bog, it's so cold. Find me in the bog. A bog. It made a sick kind of sense. Peat bogs are ancient. They preserve things. They hold on to the past. And this thing, this forest bride, was nothing if not ancient. The fifth day dawned gray and heavy with a fine, chilling mist. I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt since the beginning. I was a man walking to his own execution, but I was finally going to the right place. I asked the silent, watching trees, "Where is the bog?" I didn't expect an answer, but a branch, rotten and heavy, cracked and fell from a great height, pointing like a bony finger to the east. I went east. The air grew thick and foul with the smell of stagnant water and decay. The vibrant green of the forest gave way to a landscape of muted browns and grays. The ground became spongy, sucking at my boots. And there, in the center of a vast mist-shrouded peat bog, I saw her. Clara. She was standing, knee-deep in the black water, still wearing her hiking clothes, now torn and filthy. Her back was to me. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, as if listening to a voice from the sky. "Clara!" I screamed, wading into the icy, clutching water. She turned slowly. Her face was pale and gaunt, but her eyes, they were still those black, vacant pools. A smile stretched across her lips, a cruel, mocking imitation of her real smile. "Liar!" The thing inside her hissed with her voice. "You came to build me a house, little builder. You cannot build here. This ground is mine." I stopped, waist deep in the bog, my heart hammering. This wasn't a rescue. It was a confrontation. I had no weapons, no holy water, no prayers. I only had one thing it didn't: the truth of who she was. "Clara," I said, my voice low and steady, fighting the tremor of pure terror. "Your name is Clara Vogel. You're an architect. You hate licorice. You sing old David Bowie songs off-key in the shower. You cried when we saw the Notre Dame spire fall. You are loved. You are loved by me, and I am not leaving here without you." I took another step forward. The thing snarled, its face contorting. "She is mine!" "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "She is Clara, and she is stronger than you." I was right in front of her now. The entity glared with pure hatred, but for a single, fleeting second, I saw a flicker in her eyes, a spark of pain, a flash of the woman I knew. It was enough. I didn't try to fight it. I simply wrapped my arms around her, pulling her cold, stiff body against mine. I held her, whispering her name over and over into her hair. "Clara, Clara."
Come back to me. Come back. She went rigid, a guttural scream tearing from her throat that seemed to shake the very mist. And then, all at once, the fight went out of her. She collapsed, a dead weight in my arms. The vacant black look was gone from her eyes, replaced by a dazed, exhausted confusion. She was back. But the thing, I could feel it wasn't gone. It was just dormant, a sleeping sickness inside her. The journey out of the horrors was a nightmare of its own. Clara was weak, drifting in and out of consciousness, sometimes weeping, sometimes speaking in that other tongue before slumping back into a fitful sleep. I half carried, half dragged her, my own body screaming in protest. We didn't go to a hospital. I knew what the doctors would see: exhaustion, dehydration, shock. They wouldn't see the occupant. I drove to the nearest town, a picturesque place called Quedlinburg, with cobblestone streets and half-timbered houses that now felt like a sinister fairy tale. I asked for a priest, not just any priest, an old one. They directed me to a small stone church on the edge of town. Inside, it was dark and silent, smelling of old wood and incense. Father Reinhardt was a small, frail man with kind, tired eyes that held a deep, unsettling wisdom. He took one look at Clara, slumped in a pew, and then at me, and he knew. "That is not a sickness for a doctor," he said quietly. He took us into a small, bare room behind the altar. What followed wasn't the dramatic spectacle you see in movies. It wasn't roaring, no levitating. It was worse. It was a solemn, grinding war of attrition. Father Reinhardt prayed, his voice a steady, unwavering river of Latin. Clara, or the thing inside her, responded with a quiet, venomous stream of hatred, whispering my deepest fears, my secret shames, things it had no way of knowing. It promised to twist her, to break her, to make me watch. It was a violation of the soul. But the old priest never wavered, and I held Clara's hand, anchoring her to this world, to me, repeating my own simple, secular prayer. "You are Clara. You are loved. Come back to me." It lasted for hours, and then with a final shuddering gasp that seemed to drain the very air from the room, it was over. A profound silence fell, broken only by Clara's soft, natural weeping. The weight was gone. The room felt clean. We left Germany a week later. Clara has no memory of those 5 days. The doctors call it dissociative amnesia, a trauma response. I don't correct them. She still has nightmares. So do I. We live a quiet life now, far from any deep woods. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the trees outside our house just right, it sounds less like a rustle and more like a whisper. And I know, with a cold certainty that will never leave me, that the forests of the Harz are old, and they have long, long memories. They remember what was taken from them. And some whispers, no matter how far you run, are destined to follow you home. A few years back, I was in college, driving home to Texas for winter break. The trip stretched clear across the country, which meant multiple days of endless highway. I was your typical broke student, so hotels were out of the question. I just threw some blankets in the back seat and decided I'd sleep in the car whenever I got too tired to drive. Around 1 a.m., after 11 straight hours on the road, I hit a wall. I was getting dangerously sleepy, so I pulled into the next rest stop I saw off I-10 in Arizona. It was one of those small pull-offs, just a little building with restrooms and a couple of vending machines tucked against a dusty hillside. Only one other car was there, parked way in the back.
I pulled into the opposite spot to give us both space. I got out to stretch my legs and use the restroom. The place was filthy, but I did what I needed to do. When I walked back to my car, a man was standing right at my window, peering inside. Can I help you?" My voice made him jump. He took a nervous step back and chuckled, saying he was just checking if I was in there to ask for change for the vending machine. My car was a fishbowl, clear, untinted windows. There was no reason for him to be pressed against the glass like that. "Yeah, I got no cash on me. Sorry, ma'am," I said, sliding past him to get to my door. But he didn't leave. Instead, he tried to make conversation. "What brings you out here tonight?" he asked. "I'm on a road trip. Look, I'm sorry, but I really need to get some sleep. I can't talk right now." I got in my car and shut the door. The guy gave a weak, apologetic wave and finally walked back to his car and got in. I was relieved he had a car. At least he wasn't some stranded creep. Honestly, I was so exhausted I didn't even process how uncomfortable I should have been. I just needed to close my eyes. Looking back with a clear head, I should have just left right then. I shoved the junk from my front seat into the back, reclined my seat, and tried to get comfortable. My eyes had been shut for only a few minutes when I saw light sweeping across my eyelids. I sat up. In the rearview mirror, I saw his car had moved. It was now parked right behind mine, blocking me in. I watched for a full minute, my heart starting to thump. This was getting way too weird. I knew I had to cut my losses and get out of there. I pulled my seat up, threw the car in drive, and sped back onto the highway, muttering every curse word I knew under my breath. This stretch of road was desolate. Finding another place to stop was going to cost me another 40 minutes of dangerous driving. The fatigue was a physical weight. My eyelids kept drooping shut for a second, then I'd snap them open, my heart lurching as I corrected the wheel. This fight with sleep went on for what felt like an eternity until I finally saw another rest area. This one looked almost the same, except it was clearly abandoned. The building was decayed, wrapped in faded caution tape and covered in graffiti. But it was a place to pull over. I figured I could finally get a few hours of peace. Maybe it was the absolute silence of the place, or maybe I was just completely spent, but I passed out almost the second I closed my eyes. I actually got decent sleep from about 2 a.m. until 4 a.m. when a violent crash jolted me awake. The whole car shook. I scrambled up, disoriented. I looked in my left mirror and saw headlights parked behind me. Then I looked in the right mirror. A man was standing there, a metal baseball bat in his hands. He swung it again, smashing my back window. "What the fuck?" I screamed, fumbling for my keys. He came around to the passenger window, and in the dim light, I saw his face. It was him, the guy from the first rest stop. He wore the sinister, stretched smile and started taunting me. "Liar," he said over and over. He swung the bat into my door, then just stared at me with that insane grin. Liar. I didn't know what he meant, but I didn't care. The engine turned over and I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out of there. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to call 911. I met a straight trooper at a gas station miles away. We surveyed the damage. 2 shattered windows, dents all over the body, and I hadn't even noticed. My back right tire was slashed and flat. Another officer went to the abandoned rest stop. He found the broken glass, but the man was long gone. They put out a bolo for him and his car, but they never found a thing. I was stuck in some tiny Arizona town for 3 days while my car was patched up. I did eventually make it home. It's terrifying how a single mundane rejection can trigger such insanity. I figure he snapped because I didn't give him a couple of bucks or my time at 1 a.m. on the side of the highway. The fact that I almost died over something so trivial is what truly haunts me. This happened back in 2014. I never took road trips then. I never had the vacation time to spare. But I was between jobs when my family planned a surprise 50th for my dad in Florida. Back then, gas was cheap and flights were sky high. To save cash, I decided to drive. I gave myself 3 days to be safe. After the first long day, I pulled into a budget motel off I-80 in Nebraska. It wasn't the Ritz, but it worked. I slept until 11, packed up, and opened my door to leave, only to freeze. A man was standing right there in the doorway. "Excuse me?" I said, trying to squeeze past him.
He barely moved, making it painfully awkward. He was in his mid-40s with heavy bags under his eyes. He just had this unsettling look. As I carried the rest of my bags to the car, he stayed there, just creepily watching me from my motel room door. I was seriously relieved I wasn't staying another night. I checked out and hit the road. This was my marathon day. I planned on 10 hours straight. The first leg was fine, mostly driving through towns. But 5 or 6 hours in, the cities faded out, replaced by long, empty stretches of rural highway. Knowing services would be scarce, I stopped at the next gas station to fill up. I paid, started the pump, and ran inside for a coffee. When I came back out, I saw a car, a deep red old Corolla, pulled up way too close to mine. Its bumper was practically kissing my rear fender. No one was pumping gas, and the windshield was tinted black. I couldn't see a thing inside, but I felt eyes on me. I finished fueling, got in my car, and left. Almost instantly, that Corolla pulled out too, never having gotten gas, and merged onto the highway right behind me. I spotted them in my mirror for a while, hanging back 5 or 6 cars, but as the sun set, the headlights behind me all blurred together. As the night wore on, traffic thinned out. I drove for 4 more hours without seeing it, and I'd almost convinced myself it was a coincidence. My bigger problem was staying awake. My coffee was gone, and the next major city was still 2 hours away. I just had to make it. I figured another coffee, even just for something to do, would get me through the final stretch. I took the next exit. The gas station was closed, the convenience store dark. I was disappointed, but I still needed to top off my tank. I pulled up to a pump. Almost immediately, a single set of headlights turned off the empty highway and onto the exit ramp. This place was already creepy, a lone, lit-up island in a sea of darkness. My heart hammered in my chest when I recognized the deep red Corolla. The thought hit me like a punch. I was being followed. I fumbled to put the nozzle back, my hands shaking. The Corolla didn't head for a pump. It sped right toward me, screeching to a halt beside my driver's door, blocking me in. I barely got inside and locked the doors before the passenger door of the Corolla flew open. A man jumped out and ran straight for my car, yanking on the handle. It was him, the same man from the motel. Those same dead eyes locked onto mine, sending a jolt of pure ice through my veins. I turned the key, the engine roared to life, and he realized the door was locked. He stopped pulling. As I slammed the car into reverse, I shot him a glance. I expected to see rage. What I saw was worse. He was grinning, a wide, ear-to-ear smile like this was the most fun he'd ever had. A complete psychopath. I floored it, swerving around him and racing back to the interstate. I didn't stop until I hit the city lights. Thankfully, I'm sure I wasn't followed that time. What truly haunts me is that he got out of the passenger seat. Someone else was driving. They were in on it together. They had followed me for over 10 hours. And the terrifying part is, they could have been tracking me since the day before, and I'd never even known. I still can't forget that road trip, even a decade later. I was on a road trip with my buddy Liam to see some old college friends in California. The drive was a beast, about 15 hours, but we figured with 2 drivers we could power through in one shot. I took the first shift. About 4 hours in, Liam took the wheel. The plan was for me to crash while he drove, but I just couldn't. I don't know why, but I couldn't get comfortable. So by the time it was my turn to drive again, I was exhausted, maybe even more than before. I could keep my eyes open and focus on the road, but I completely missed the gas gauge dipping into the red. We were in Liam's beat-up old Jeep. No fancy low fuel warning, just a simple gauge I never bothered to check. The engine only started sputtering when the tank was already dry. Liam jolted awake and grabbed his phone, searching for the nearest station. But less than 30 seconds later, I was coasting onto the shoulder. The car just died. I felt like such an idiot. To make it worse, Liam said the closest gas was 4 miles up the road. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, somewhere on a lonely Colorado pass. Just empty plains and darkness, not another car in sight. We debated our options for a minute before Liam decided he'd walk to the station and bring back a gas can. I'd stay with the car. Not a great plan, but it seemed stupid to pay $200 for a tow truck when the station was technically within walking distance. Even though it was 1 a.m. and pitch black, Liam didn't seem worried. He headed off down the road and was swallowed by the darkness in under a minute. I slumped in my seat, just thinking about how I'd gotten us into this mess. Then I saw headlights approaching from ahead. They passed us, but they were moving way too slow. The limit was 60, and they were crawling at maybe 15. I watched in the side mirror. They didn't speed up. Instead, they slowed to a stop, then executed a slow, deliberate three-point turn to come back. Frankly, I didn't want to admit we needed help. Turns out, I didn't have to. They crept past us again, this time moving at a walking pace, maybe 5 miles an hour. I could feel them staring through the windows, studying me, before they finally accelerated and disappeared the way they came. What was that about? My eyes stayed locked on the road, a cold dread settling in my gut. Something was very wrong. I pulled out my phone and called Liam. I just wanted to warn him, to tell him to hurry. The line rang and rang, no answer. That really worried me. Maybe his phone was on silent or he'd lost service. I waited a minute and called again. Still nothing. I wasn't thinking straight, but I made a decision. I had to ditch the car and find Liam. It had only been 15 minutes since he left. If he was still walking, I could jog and catch up in no time. I locked the car and started jogging along the roadside. The silence out there was absolute. It was so quiet that when I stopped to catch my breath, the only sound was the high-pitched ringing in my own ears. I jogged for 15 solid minutes. I should have caught up to him by now, unless he'd started running for some reason. I decided to try his phone one more time, and that's when I heard it. Ringing. Faint, but unmistakable, coming from somewhere off the side of the road. I peered into the emptiness past the shoulder and saw a dim light glowing in the tall grass. My whole body went rigid. Liam. No response. I couldn't see anything but that faintly lit screen. I took a few steps off the asphalt, calling his name again. Finally, a response, a faint whisper from the darkness near the phone. I hurried closer, and Liam's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and desperate. "Get down!" I still couldn't see him, but I dropped into the grass. That's when I looked back and saw the car. It was the same one, crawling down the road again. They were hunting for us. They made 3 or 4 slow passes, scanning the area before finally moving on. Once they were gone, we scrambled up and ran all the way to the gas station. Liam explained the guy had pulled over offering a ride. He said the man was just off, not even hiding his bad intentions. When Liam refused, the guy got out of his car and Liam just bolted. The predator assumed he'd stay on the road, so he got back in his car to give chase. But Liam had dived into the fields and hidden. His phone flew out of his pocket during the scramble, and he was too terrified to move and reveal his position. We made it to the station, got help, and filed a report with the state police. They never found the guy or his car. It was a horrifyingly close call, and I still feel guilty for being the reason we were ever in that situation. But one thing's for sure, I never let the gas tank dip below half anymore.